To my plan of having a quiet little talk and know what we'd turn up to. Hello, I am Raggedy Man. This is an introduction to Bonsai. In the next hour, I will be going over a small amount of things to do with Bonsai. Can everyone see this screen?
Yes.
Pretty much.
Fantastic. Can everyone see these? Yep. That's up for grabs. That's up for grabs. That's up for grabs. That's up for grabs. That. Fucking get them out of my life. This is mine. Please don't steal it. But I'll understand if you do. Anyway, the way we're going to be doing this is there's going to be a bit of background on the concept of bonsai. There's going to be a bit on the styles and arts involved. There's going to be a chunk on where to get them. There's going to be a chunk on how to look after them. And there's going to be a lot of photos of them looking really, really lovely. Because lovely. Please ask questions, but don't ask what type of tree is that. I have no clue. I know there are many, many people involved in bonsai who just see a leaf and go, oh, that's a plant. I'm not one of them. I get them and I know what they are by finding out how they died. Anyway, what is my experience with bonsai? I got into it by going, wow, those look really nice, which is everything you need to know to get into bonsai. And then finding out that it's complicated and mystical art from Japan. Then I found out that you can just go and buy one and then try and keep it alive, so it's not that mystical. Like all good bonsai growers, I have an extensive collection of empty pots. This was explained to me very recently by someone who I'll forget. Bonsai is the ancient art of killing trees. However, it is cheating if you use the same technique twice. You must always be finding new and interesting ways to kill your tree. Never. If you do the same mistake twice, you have failed in your goal of new ways to talk to the little fuckers. There are extensive resources available online. The basics are all the same for all the plants. The more complicated stuff is really debated, but don't let it dehydrate. You need to have it in soil and you need to keep clipping it. It's the basics, and that never changes. You will find out that you can clip leaves wrong, which was quite a style. As in literally not clipping the leaf off, but in that you can make the wrong insertion on a single leaf, and that's a terrible tragedy that will mean your tree will never be good ever again. So don't worry about the more detailed stuff, just worry about the basics when you're starting out. And you will really learn by doing it wrong, because of 20 years of mistakes. I've also gone to a bunch of events and gone, wow, that tree, tell me about it. And people just start talking about it because bonsai people love going, oh, you looked at my tree, I'm going to be your friend. Because any hobby that involves just looking at a tree and going, how are you going to look in 3 years? That kind of person needs people to talk to.
That's what we got.
So talk to them. Okay, so what is bonsai? Oh God, I bollocks that. There is no, one very quick thing, bonsai is a technique rather than a specific group of trees or of plants. Theoretically, you can bonsai anything. It's just, when people are talking about bonsai breeds, they're basically talking about stuff that is better suited for the process, either because they just grow looking more aesthetically, or they're able to survive the process more easily, or just they've got less broad leaves. Because if you're trying to make a little plant, if you're trying to make something that looks like a huge great tree, and it's got little tiny leaves, that looks really good. If you're trying to do like an oak, I've got a tree this tall and the leaf is this big. Technically it's bonsai, but it just won't look as hot. They're a bit of living art. They look amazing, especially the ones, especially the one you've made as you did that, even if it's just keeping it alive. Now, if you have your tree and you've kept it alive and you love it, and anyone gives you shit, chin them. You kept the fucker alive. That is amazing. It's wonderful. It's a nightmare. It's a fun hobby. You get to play around with mud and wire and cutters. You get to learn and discover as a hobby, and just as like with the individual plants, you get to literally know your tree, which is great fun. And also one of the best bits about it is trees grow really slowly. So you have to work with the seasons and where they are in their process. And professional gear means stuff that's more durable. There's like no magic secret to it. You can't you can't Geardo your way into bonsai. Trust me, I've tried. But it just, a pair of cutters that are like consumer grade, the only difference between them and a professional grade is literally they'll last a bit longer. They're still essentially the same basic tools. So that's why it's lovely. Anyway, 5 main goals of bonsai. Miniaturization. You're trying to make a smaller version of a tree in a pot that looks like the big version. Although trees can grow really big, so there's some pretty big bonsai. The world's tallest is 18 foot at the moment. And the species in question normally goes up to 80. So it's in a pot, it's smaller than the real thing, and it looks like the big size, so therefore that's a bonsai. They go all the way from 18 foot to, I think, like that big, the micro bonsais, which mentalists grow. If you want something that's more demanding than a three-month-old baby, get a micro bonsai. And yeah, don't yeah. The reason you pick, so this is the reason we're looking for proportion amongst elements. So the reason you pick small leaf trees is so that they look like big leaf trees when they're small. As I said with the whole leaf thing. You cut back clumps so that it looks like the main bits. So like, if you, a normal tree on all the way on its branch will have leaves all the way along, right? Which is lovely and wonderful and not what we want. If you're looking at it from a distance, you'll only see the big clumps. So what we do is we get the small tree and we cut off all the little bits, so there's only a couple of big clumps. Does that make sense? Well, you can really see it on that one. There, normally the whole thing would have leaves everywhere, but if we put a gap there and a gap there, it looks like, ooh, big tree. And you want to keep the ratio of trunks the same size. So, yeah, you want asymmetry. This is something people get really confused about. I don't know why, it's pretty straightforward. Trees aren't symmetrical normally. We're trying to make something that looks like a normal tree, so we don't want to make it symmetrical. We want to make it so that everything looks wonderfully, perfectly natural by doing strange things, including taking branches and going, I'm going to cut you out, I'm going to put you here or there, and doing all that. Lots and lots of effort to make it look asymmetrical and accidental and lovely. We also want to leave no trace of the artist. Fucking luck. You want to hide all the cut marks and wires and other bits. There's a lot that you're basically putting an absolute ton of effort into going effortlessly. So it's practically it's Instagram for people who like plants. You're gonna that one perfect shot you see of a bonsai at an event. Somebody was probably sitting there with a calculator working out which minute to take the picture so it would look the most lustrous. When you are starting with bonsai, don't worry about the Instagram reality, just worry about having a right giggle. And then poignancy, and this is the wonderful bit, and I think someone already hollowed it out, is you're doing this just to have something that's lovely to look at and that carries a, best way to describe it is a weight to it. There is something about bonsai that you look at it and you just go, oh yeah. And that's what you're doing it for. And you can get just as good a result out of something that's like $500,000 and something you bought from, as we'll get into later, you bought from the local garden centre and have been keeping for a couple of years. So that's that. Stuffed bonsai is not, it's not cruel. Even the mentalists at PETA agree that plants don't really feel pain, so you're absolutely fine. Miniaturization doesn't exactly affect their health. They just need you to care for them more, so being smaller and being in a smaller pot and all that doesn't cause them any harm. It's just not their natural environment. It's why trees normally have really, really big roots. So it won't cause them any harm as long as you look after them. But if you don't look after them, don't worry, they don't feel pain. You will, they don't. But Also, don't forget, these are some of the most pampered trees in history. There are literally trees in Japan, but it is a treasonous act to not look after properly. To give you an idea of how cared for some of these things are. So yeah, these things can last just as long as a normal tree, if not longer, because there's mentalists looking after them. They're not monstrously expensive. You can start for 20 quid. Having said that, this I picked up for 2 quid, and local garden centre, I didn't buy a whole bunch of trees that were going for a tenner each to bring along, because I thought I'd put enough into it as it was. So you can just keep an eye at your garden centre and it will all go well. Impossible. There are basically a couple of principles. Water it, feed it, trim it. If you keep on doing that as the tree tells you to do it, it'll live. If that's all you want to do is to make a bonsai live, you can literally bugger off now, water it, feed it, trim it. That's it, that's the whole thing. If worst comes to the worst, it's a fucking tree, put it in the ground, let it look after itself. If you're worried, if you get a bonsai that goes completely out of control and you're worried you're going to kill it, put it in the ground. It'll be fine, as long as you don't run it over or anything like that. But it's somewhere that no one will run. Trees can't run away is all I'm saying. But yeah, if you're worried, put it in the ground, that'll be fine. And nothing is an emergency if you're paying attention. All you have to do is spend it's one of the things I love about bonsais, it's a couple of minutes a day having a look at it and learning it and getting used to it and just going, how's it doing? What's it looking like? And if you just put in a couple of minutes a day, also known as quiet me time, you'll keep an eye on it and you'll keep it alive, because you'll see what's going on, you'll see where everything's going, and nothing's going to be a nightmare. Is that a question or a...
No,
no more questions for this boy. Anyway, this looks really fucking nice. I'm never going to produce anything like this in my life. Don't give a shit. That looks lovely. Mine look lovely as well. Anyway, some basic styles. This is the main style that everyone goes gushy about. This is the formal upright. It's dull as fuck. Trunk is going upright. The top is over the trunk. So there's the top, there's the trunk. It's all nice and lined. And the branches taper, which loosely means they're a bit thicker there, and then they get a little tiny there. And you can see, like I was saying with the clumping, you've got nice separations, distinct. I'll go into that later, but I'm just looking at it. I would love this. So you've also got an exposed trunk. You've got nothing going across there, so you can just see the actual trunk, and you can go, ooh, that's a lovely trunk, which doesn't normally happen in nature, because trees don't normally have a face in nature. Whereas in bonsai, you always have your plant has what's called a face, which is the bit you look at. Most trees don't care about that because they're nowhere near as narcissistic as bonsais. Broom is also popular, which is basically that, but all the way around. They also have faces, but they're supposed to look great from every direction. This is informal upright, which is exactly the same, other than the main trunk has just gone mental. This is really popular because you don't have to press around trying to keep it straight, and you can put loads of lovely little bends in it. It's also the most common looking one you'll get in nature. It's got visible grooves, it's got visible curves in the trunks and branches, and the top of the tree is over, but the top of the tree is over where that starts, so top there and there. Can everyone see the lovely little delicate pine needles? Yeah, it's a wonderful example of the miniaturization where that, because they're really nice and small, they look like a much bigger tree. So you're adults, you know. Anyway, it's also got really nice clear sections where someone has just spent hours killing all the little bugs across there and got a pair of tweezers going. Oh, God. You end up doing that. It's a bizarre hobby. Slanting is basically a nice straight piece that's gone over to the side. It's got a straight trunk like a formal upright, but it's going on one side. It looks like a fallen log, then decided to grow again. You get semi-cascade, which is similar to slant, but with more free-flowing trunk, and it goes down near the lip of the pot. It's modelled after the trees that grow over water or down the side of mountains. And then you've got full cascade, also known as where the hell am I going to hide the counterweight in this fucker? It's basically where it goes down below the base of the pot. They are a nightmare to keep stable. They look lovely, but if you've got a cat, good luck. You can also see that massive rock. Yeah, that's not an aesthetic choice. That's yeah. You also get what's known as root over rock, which is where you take a perfectly happy bonsai, you find a rock, you take all the soil out from the bonsai and you slap it on top of the rock, and you just put all the roots going down over it so it looks really, really pretty. And for about a season, all the roots are exposed, and you're just going, I'm going to water you every day in case you die, and then it dies. Other people have been more successful. There's also forest, which is more than one tree in a pot. It's normally the same type, and it's normally an odd number. That's why both of mine aren't. And then you also get mini, which is tiny trees for people who want to kill things in thimbles. Yeah, they look gorgeous. These are the 13 principles of bonsai. I don't expect any of you to be able to read through all of these. But these are useful bits. They're good guidelines for how to create the illusion that we are after. You can ignore them, but it's useful to know what you would then, if you are going to ignore them. I will have these slides available later. It's basically, if you follow all of these steps, you will get something that looks like a bonsai. And if you then decide to go, nah, don't wanna, as long as you're consciously doing it, it'll still probably look pretty cool. So it's useful to know them and to follow them after you've got past the first stage of not killing the fucker. So yeah, not following them exactly will have miserable people moaning at you. Please be aware of that. Well, they'll go, well, it looks lovely, but it doesn't conform to this standard, therefore you're shit. Until which I just go, I'm happy, fuck you. There are a lot of people in the bonsai world who need to get a life. Anyway, brief history. Originated from the Chinese practice of Bonsai. Miniature trees and rockeries, which is possibly where people got the idea of mages who shrunk mountains from. Yes, and definitely got the idea of it's old miserable men mostly get into it because they can muck around with the soil. In the 6th century, I put gentry there. Wow, I can't type. We had the first example. So that's the first example of it from a scroll. Then it came to Japan by the Buddhist monks. This is the first example of it in a scroll, as everyone can see there. Looks lovely. And this is the first example 10 years later of one-upmanship, where someone's gone and spent a fortune on making a really nice bench, because that makes the tree look nicer, apparently. 10 years for it to become competitive. Bullshit. Where are we? Then it just basically bounced around Japan for ages. 1780s, you had an exhibition of traditional dwarf potted pines began to be held annually in Kyoto. And then the early 1800s, a Japanese scholar of Chinese arts gathered to discuss recent styles. Basically, people started putting loads of rules on it. This was when it got renamed to bonsai and started to become seen as a traditional Japanese thing and not something that they half-inched from the Chinese. No, Japan's never done that. In 1882 there was the Artistic Bonsai Concourse, that was in Tokyo, followed by publication of a 3-volume commemorative picture book, which I can't find a fucking image on anyway. The event demonstrated a new tendency to see bonsai as independent. 1803, they started putting them in restaurants to look all real swish and modern and stuff, which was great for the people doing it. And 1906, this wonderful publication, Bonsai Go, became the first monthly magazine on the subject. And then you know you've just got all the fucking nerds if you're making a monthly magazine. It's still going, it's still pretty good. The first national annual bonsai show was held in 1914. That was repeated annually through to 1933 when everything got a little spicy. And that was in Tokyo.
A little.
A bonsai amount.
Fire bombings are not conducive to keeping a bonsai alive. Anyway, 1940, first major book on the subject in English was published. Ooh, that's that one. That was the first major book published in the Japanese capital, and that's called Dwarf Trees by Shinbu Nozaki. And some people own it, and a lot of people say it's nonsense because they don't own it. Yeah, and that was when that was also when international interest grew, because there was loads of trade and there was loads of tourism, and they started turning up and go, wow, those shrubs look amazing. And someone got hoity and went, this shrub, it's bonsai. And then the tourists went, wow, that bonsai looks amazing. What's your deal? It looks lovely. Stop being a dick. We then had a great exhibition in Heido Park to mark the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. These are glorious, would you not agree? And then they had a large display of bonsai that was held at Expo 70. It's fucking lovely. I'll take the piss out of any bonsai grower any day, but that tree, oh my god, that's beautiful. And that basically was when we started getting international associations in the CES. And then today, anybody want to guess how much the market is worth annually, globally?
$100 million.
Close.
20p.
No. $8.5 billion. There's a lot of people murdering trees out there, and they're not going to stop. Anyway, can anyone remember what that would be called?
Slant.
No, it's
Semi-cascade.
yeah,
Semi-cascade?
Yeah.
cascade.
I would have also accepted beautiful.
Yeah, fair enough.
Ah, that was a test.
Right, anyway, how to get a bonsai. This is the modern meat stuff. Number one, natural bonsai. These things exist. They are rare, they're expensive. They're mostly found by people with something to prove, or the incredibly lucky. These things happen for a variety of reasons. You can literally find them anywhere in the world. Well, you probably couldn't find them in your kitchen, but you get what I mean. Basically, these happens due to the space the roots have been. Who wrote my notes? You have situations where the space the roots have to move in reduces the height, because most trees grow on a set ratio, because they've got it built into their DNA of, if I've got this much space for the roots and I go over this high, I'm going to fall over. So they don't, because trees are smart. You'll also find out later that they're lizards. It's complicated, but if a seed ends up in a small place, it will just grow small, but it will continue to grow big, because once a year it comes onto it. Hostile environments such as wind or grazing is also great, generate these things, and anywhere recovering after extreme incidents, so for example, hurricane, massive rain, blast of rain that's washed everything away, or fire is really good. That one I believe was found post-fire. If you join any of the bonsai groups, there will always be someone going, I went off to the boonies and I found this, and it's great for them. I went down the garden centre and got something nice. I'm not saying you shouldn't do these extreme things, I'm just saying you don't need to on your first try. Has anyone got any questions about these? Right. There's also growing from seed. Thank you. These are marketed at beginners, which is dumb because they take fucking ages to do. You're growing it from a seed. They are incredibly cool and very interesting to watch. But if you've got cats, they're also a source of fibre for your cats, no matter where you put them. You can grow these from seeds, and if you are willing to put the years into it, they are great. If you just want to grow something, they're great. I'm not saying don't have a crack at them if you're a beginner, I'm just saying remember that trees are very slow growing. Most of the stuff you can buy is like 14 to 21 years old, just from the garden centre, so this is a long-term commitment, but it's an absolute giggle. One thing I would say is be careful of fake seeds, especially anything blue, because people on eBay will appear on eBay and they'll go, this extremely rare seed, only £200 for 3 of them, and you send it to them, and then 3 years later you turn around to eBay and they go, well, he sold me an absolute, this isn't what he sold me, and they go, that's way beyond our statute of limitations, so he's got your money. So be careful of that. If anyone wants to go, have a go. Air layering, this is the lizard bit. This is really quite amazing. This is how the bulk of bonsai gets made. What you do is you make a massive great gap in the branch. You find a big bit of the big tree, and you go, ooh, I could turn that into a bonsai. And it would look really, really awesome. So you hack out that bit there. You cover it up with moss and an old bin bag, and you leave it there for anywhere between 3 to 18 months, and it will grow roots. Like a lizard, kind of. And then what you do is you hack the bottom off there, and you put it in a pot, and you've got a really nice thick bit of branch that you shape into a bonsai from there. And if you're really efficient, you go, well, I don't want the bit at the top, so you put an air layer at the top, and that means you've then got 2 trees. And then you've got the original tree that hasn't died, so you get 3 trees for the price of 1. So you can carry on just cloning and cloning and cloning and cloning. It's either gets done in the nursery or on common ground, which you can do. If there's a park nearby you and you're thinking that you could get away with putting a bag on a branch for 3 to 18 months, you could have a crack at just finding a tree and making it into a bit of it into a bonsai. And there is also wilderness air layering, which is done by lunatics, because they'll go hours into the countryside and into the hills to find a specific tree that looks identical to the one probably in the back garden, but they want to show. The most common source of what's called Bonsai, which I'll go into in a minute. Oh my god, how am I this far through it? You can get really regular and nice shapes out of them. You can air layer the top to increase the number of trees you have, and it's just really cool because it shows how fractal trees are. You can just take a bit and a bit and a bit. Did any of that make sense? Cool, right. Note to self, more knob gags. Bonsai material, of which we have many examples. This is either, this covers an established plant that's been cut back, so you get like a full-blown tree and you just go right and cutting everything above this level off and hacking it down to the core and then shaping it. Any older saplings which have got potential, very young saplings, as you can see across here, or anything that you can get and then hack up, so from garden centres or from common ground. Go grab something from the garden centre that you look at and you go, oh, I can make a bonsai out of that. You probably can do, just cut it down. As I said, there's no specific thing as a bonsai tree, there's just stuff that you can bonsai. Find something, hack it up.
What about hazelnut trees? Because I looked online and it said they're not really. I get 100 of those every year. You can have some.
Yeah, I'll have a go.
I have a squirrel that buries all my hazelnuts. I never get to eat any, and I end up with millions of hazelnut saplings. I'll bring them in.
Hazelnuts, I think have got really broad leaves. So
round.
Yeah, so you probably have to have like quite a big sample. So I'll have a crack at it. Yeah. As long as
I'll bring some next time.
Yeah.
They're free. A squirrel makes them. So
Yeah.
organic.
Until you make the squirrel pie. And
All squirrels are organic.
But in theory, it would work.
Yeah, a bonsai is anything that is a miniature version of the tree, and trees go real high, so, you know.
Cool.
I'll probably put my back out moving it, but other than that, it'll be fine. Right, there's also nursery bonsai. This is where things get a little bit hazy. These are professionally grown and pricey. They're normally individually grown, by which I mean someone has, with a lot of what we will get into a bit, which is bonsai, they're very generic shapes, they're very process driven, whereas this is someone gets a bit of bonsai material and goes, what can I really do with it? They put time, they put care, they put attention into it. They might be doing, I mean, some nurseries will do batches of like 100 trees at a time, but these are professional people professionally doing it, and they are still considering each one of them. They're normally very well cared for, which as a beginner is really useful to know, because you know it's good stock. So if it dies, it's completely your fault. They've also, this is really useful, got an established styling. As part of the, people paying care and attention to it. Someone's basically given you a blueprint of how to keep it going. And you can either buy them to develop, which basically means, ooh, that looks really good, I'm going to do this and this and this. Or you can buy them to maintain, which is what I did recently, where I bought one and just went, this is the most perfect thing I've seen in my life. I will now keep it completely the same for as many years as possible. Yeah, they can cost anything, because this includes the stupidly priced stuff, like the $500,000 stuff. Generally start around the £100 mark. It gets messy because a nursery will also carry a lot of Bonsai with it. So you could probably pick up a nursery item, a small nursery item for less than £100. But at the same time, you could also pick up a Bonsai from a nursery that's really quite big, but it's going to be cheap. So quite where Bonsai and nursery starts and finishes dodgy. But if you go to a reputable dealer and you're buying something for around 100, it's going to be solid. But that's the price you're looking at for a professionally cared and professionally presented thing.
Sorry, you said the word Bonsai?
I'm going to be getting to Bonsai because I've mentioned it multiple times and it's later on in the slides. You could either consider it bad planning or, as I'm going to pretend, foreshadowing. Yeah, anything costing less than 100, it's likely to be similar to a very well maintained and very well continued garden centre bonsai, which is not a bad thing because you're getting a well cared for plant and they'll look really nice. You then got garden centre bonsai, which is also known as Bonsai because they were sold in malls in America at one point, and easily available living art is a bad thing because there's no one to keep hold of the gate. Anyway, these are mass produced, they've got a distinctive style pot. They normally, I think it's Israel, got a huge market for it, and there's a huge producer in Israel, there's a huge producer in Spain, and they just bulk sell them to people who then put their own label on it and then sell them to various different chains of garden centre under various different names. But they all have that style of pot, which is great because that's a really nice style. As you can see, comparing, lots of lovely fun detail and really, really cared for. Not quite as nice at this time, but you can still see it's still looking very good. These are examples of ones off Amazon. I bought and maintained a number of bonsai off Amazon because I saw the ad and I went, no, I've got 20 quid, I'll punt it, get a nice little tree. I'm not an addict. Start around 15 quid, go up to about 150. You can get some really, really big ones at the 150 mark. Whether you want to get something that big or if you want to get something a little bit smaller that's a bit more careful, that's up to you and your wallet. Brilliant starter plant, so I thoroughly encourage anyone in here to just buy one and have a crack at it. Main problems you'll get with it, and this is something you should be aware of, not well plants. If you are going to go to a garden centre, have a look at the thing, see if the actual plant is in good condition. They'll have gone through God knows how many people's hands, not everyone will have been paying attention. It could just be ill. Badly watered, the big problem you've got. The solution to that is to give them a really good soak. Bad soil, a lot of the soil you get in there is just horrible clumpy clay, which is shit for them, so all you do is swap that out. Root bound, which means no one's taking the roots out, so any guesses what you do with that?
Chop them up.
Cut off the roots. And the other major problem is you'll be looked down upon by arse-hats. Anyone want to? It is when I get banned from another bonsai group. It happens, I'll tell them to fuck off each time. Major piece of advice, do keep the label so you know what type of plant it is. I cannot say how much it's useful to do that. Or, buy an app that will identify the type of tree. Repeatedly, because you forget to note down what type of tree it is. And check online for advice. So just get the breed, run it through online, see what there is. And do put them outdoors, unless someone online tells you to. A lot of these are described as indoor bonsai when they're not. So get them outside, get them in the sunlight, get them getting regular watering, get them exposed to the environments. Otherwise, they'll probably dehydrate, and you'll probably kill them way quicker than you would normally, and that's cheating. Anyway, these are examples of Bonsai. That's the before, that's the after. That's the before, that's the after. And these are just ones that people have picked up, had a crack at. They are people with some experience. But if you buy one and have a crack at it, you'll be people with some experience. So it's all good. Next up is one of my favourites. This is the Lego variety. This is Lego set 10281.
Yes.
$49.99. No, what are frogs?
They're pink frogs.
They're pink frogs.
They are
Yes,
pink
they
frogs.
No, they're not.
Yes,
No,
they are.
Pink frogs.
There are pink frogs on there.
Look closely, they are frogs.
Okay.
Yeah, the pale pink ones are Lego frogs that have been recoloured.
Oh,
My
right.
brother has the set. It's
Right.
frogs.
I'll take.
There's another set which isn't Bonsai, which uses green frogs for leaves on another set, but there's only like a few of them.
Well, it's not Bonsai. I don't care.
Yeah,
Frogs are.
exactly. But this,
Frogs
they
are.
are
Yeah.
frogs.
Is that how you got banned from the group?
You don't want to know the list of my crimes. These are $44.99. Google, or you can Google Block Bonsai. I own both of these. They're great, and I haven't killed either of them yet. These are some of mine. That I bought in a store. I just really thought it was cute. That's a pot I spent 20 quid on, and that's one I spent 15 quid, and that's one I spent 20 quid on, and they're still going nice and strong, and they still basically look like that. No, I never always said. As you can see, that is technically a forest planting where I have very clearly not kept the same species, and there's two of them. Okay, I like the pot. This is just stuff that's really pretty. That's gorgeous, and that's tiny. Anyway, how to keep bonsai alive. This is where it gets really fun. Okay, you're going to need some tools. No matter what you do, you're going to need some tools. Watering can. Water is very egalitarian and it will fit into anything that you use with great ease. So you can get one of these, or you can get one of these. Which one's cheaper? So that's really, really useful. You need something to do the cutting with. Hopefully I didn't sound mad. Use these to cut things. You're going to need something heavy duty for bigger bits, but home scissors and or herb/thread cutters will work for the smaller jobs. Here we go. That one's called a knob cutter. So they end up. Right. This is my toolkit, which I slowly banged together for several years, and they're basically just pliers. You just find a bit of tree you don't want. Yeah, you just cut it off. That's it. As you'll see, the tree hasn't screamed. Yeah, it's also worth, if you're going to be doing cutting, and those will take out the tiny little bits that get all over the place. It's also worth getting some tree gunk because it stops your tree from dying. Tweezers, mine. Something like this, or hair tweezers, or eye tweezers, or makeup tweezers, or whatever you've got. They're really useful for getting at leaves and branches that you can't otherwise reach. Especially when you're defoliating, if you don't want to move the whole branch, just get a pair of tweezers, go in and find the dying leaf and just yoink it down. Costs practically nothing. Tweezers, spades. These are so dinky. You can actually find really good ones in kids' seaside sets. They cost practically nothing. They're used for putting, and it's just useful to have small ones because it gives you a little bit more delicacy in where you put in the soil. Scoops will also do the job, just anything that can move dirt around, so your hands also work. You can one of the simplest things to do is buy a set. That set's about 30 quid. So your tree and your tools, you're looking like 50 quid to start having a bang at it, but you don't necessarily have to get that. You've probably got enough stuff knocking around. You can spend anything you want. The main benefit of buying the more expensive stuff is durability, which is that. Right, here we go. Right. How to keep a bonsai alive? As I said, keep it watered, fed, wintered. So you want to give it regular large waterings. So you can go and water it every day. It probably won't need watering every day, so every couple of days is more useful, but make it regular, get to learn your tree, all that. Watch the leaves. Dead leaves tell all, but don't at any point be upset that, you know, if you need a translator for it, ask. Find a group, go online, Google it. There's so much information out there, but just keep an eye on the leaves. If they're not looking well, your tree's probably not doing well, so you're going to have to get a new one, or you're going to have to fix your watering regime. If it all goes wrong, if it goes wrong, by which I mean it just goes absolutely dry, you forget about it for a weekend, or you get a sudden heat wave, or any of the other things that can happen, dunk it. Now this is a very complicated technique. What you do is you get a large container, you fill it with water, and you put the bonsai in until it stops bubbling. And then you leave it. And that means that anything that had air in it beforehand has now got water in it. You leave it in there for about 3 minutes, then you yoink it out, and that will normally recover most dried out bonsai, providing you get there quickly enough, which you will because you've been paying attention. You then got to feed it, which is fun. You can either use liquid. Liquid I find is a bit easier to use because you can stop using it. You can just pour it in and measure it out and stuff like that. Or you can use solid, so that's the liquid, you mix it up. Always use the ratio it says on there. Don't think, oh, we'll give it a little bit extra as a tree because it will probably burn out the roots. It has burnt out the roots. Or you can just get little solid lumps of it that you put in little baskets and you have them there, and you just got to remember to water over it, and then it will seep through. It's all good. There's pros and cons to either of them. Just remember that if you overfeed the tree, you will kill it by burning it alive from the roots. Oh. Okay. Right. You can also get moss, which is quite good. Moss can look nice. There's an example of a nice looking moss. There's some nice looking moss in there. There's some not nice looking moss in there. It can help with the watering, and it can help with the nutrient cycles. The trees can sometimes get off there. It can look nice, so you can get rid of it so it won't steal the nutrients or hide the problems that you're facing. But if you are watering it well and if you are feeding it well, you will get moss happening. What you do with it is up to you. You've then got the wintering. Trees follow rhythms, including which bits of it grows, when and how. And if you break that rhythm, it just bollockses it. So you need to put it outside in winter, and you need to let it go through the processes. Read up on your tree, get used to the scheduling. Don't feed it outside of spring or summer, because otherwise you end up putting a whole load of nutrients into the soil when the tree's not doing anything, and other things will come along and go, oh, I'm going to eat that, and then they'll decide to eat your roots, which is bad. And just never let them freeze. They're perfectly fine going down to 0. It's just if it goes below there that you start getting problems. If the general air around a bonsai is at 0, the soil will keep it at about 1 degree in a back garden or whatever. It helps it get through the winter, it reminds it that it's in winter, and it works really nicely that way. Where am I? Yeah. Main problem is that if it goes below the 0, the water in it will expand. You break the branches by them expanding, or you can crush the roots. If you've got a whole load of water in the roots and it goes 0, suddenly the water expands, the roots just get slammed. If you've got a whole load of water up in the branches, the water will expand in the branches, and that will murder the calipers and all the stuff within the fibres of the tree. As long as it's near 0, yo!
If a tree normally survives deep winters, why does it not as a bonsai?
Because trees are normally not in a very small dish. It's purely down to the dish. A number of people in winter will literally just bury their bonsai because the soil will just keep everything nice and warm. It's purely the issue is with the dish. Yeah. Remember, bonsai is a tree, and we're doing everything we can to stop them being in their natural environment so they look nicer. Okay, pruning. This is the bit that everyone shits themselves over, because I know I do. You're going to have to encourage the tree to look beautiful to your standards, because obviously it wants to be a full-blown tree and not a little mini one. And the big thing to remember is trees are used to being nibbled on by predators. So as long as you're careful with what you're doing, giving a small trim is not going to absolutely massacre them. Big thing, live branches flex, dead branches don't. So if you are wondering whether a branch is good or bad, just give it a little twizzle. If it comes up in your hand, it's dead. Fuck it. Be worried about why it died, but don't be worried about the fact it is dead. Does that make sense? Yeah. Regular small trims are really useful. By which I mean like every 1 or 2 months. If you're doing more, a trim more than every couple of months, you've got a problem, and the tree's just going to stop trying to grow completely. Again, when you get your tree, read up on it, get the advice on it. But it's better to do a number of small trims than a huge, great big trim. Here's a wonderful example of some trimmage and how it changes the shape of it. Large branches do one at a time and use gunk. Gunk is an amazing sealant. You can either get the really fancy Japanese stuff, or you can get the basic generic stuff. And you just, on the large branches, you just put it on and it cuts off the exposure to the outside world. Don't, however, cut off a bit of branch, coat it with the sealant, and then be surprised that it doesn't grow through the sealant. I have seen people doing that, and it's just like, no, you've sealed it over, it's not going to grow there, give up, that branch is not going to go any further. But yeah, and again, keep it mostly to spring and summer. I know I'm going as fast as I can. This is the wonderful world of wiring. You will want to get some 1mm, some 2mm, and some 3mm wires. The goal here is to put just enough pressure on to guide it in the right direction. So when you are wiring things up, you just want to encourage it in a certain direction rather than forcing it through. If it's too tight, it'll bite into the bark, possibly scarring it. If it's too loose, it will have no effect on the shape. And surprisingly enough, will also bite into the bark, which is just annoying. Basically, there's 2 ways of doing wiring. There's the way you did it, which is wrong, and there's the way you should have done it. Everyone is terrible at wiring at the beginning until they aren't. There are so many guides available on this, it's untrue. But basically, you're just trying to move things in the right direction. Okay. And also get a pair of clippers. They're really useful for when you take the wire off, which you should do after about 2, maybe 3 months. Okay, repotting. A healthy tree will grow lots of roots and then choke to death on them very slowly, which is annoying. So the reason to do it, you can either get a bigger pot or a nicer pot. Never forget you can just change the pot if you like the new one. Or you can use the same nice pot and keep it the same size. Very simple process. If you want to do the bigger pot, you get a bigger pot, you add soil, and then you add the old tree in. Literally pick it up, drop it in. Slip potting, absolutely safe. Pretty much guaranteed to work. I've managed to kill one doing it, but wait until spring. The other option is wait until the spring, remove all the dirt, cut back until you have just like the core ball of the roots, and then put it into either the same size pot or a new pot with all the soil around it. Be careful, you do read up on when to do if you want to cut down the roots. Anyone got any questions on this bit? No? Okay. So that's that. With soil, Soil is just a ridiculously nerdy topic, monstrously nerdy topic. You can basically buy fancy stuff like that, or oh, I forgot I had all these. You can buy really. Oh, this is so out of order. Sorry. You can either buy that, which is just the generic stuff. Or you can buy that, which is monstrously expensive. That's Akadama. That is clay, small clumps of clay that have been ground out. It's incredibly popular in Japan because Japan has Japan weather. It's incredibly popular outside of Japan because it's popular in Japan. We aren't in Japan, so this is just absolutely expensive and overkill. And that works just as well. Clay is useful. I mean, the mix I normally use is soil with some bark, because bark's really useful. It's got some good. You basically want to create a growing medium that has got not too much organic matter in it, as in stuff that can get soaked up and go horribly wrong, and is nice and open. So there's lots of space for the water to come in, for the gas exchange to happen, for the roots to go around. But if you've got it too open, it all falls apart horribly. So you want something that's also open and yet closed. So I use a mix of soil, because that's the good stuff, things to go in. Clay, because it's really useful, because you can see the colours on it, and that gives you an indication of how damp the soil is. I use bark because that just adds a bit of open texture to it. And I've also got into using lava pumice, because when you pour the water over it, it just goes so you know it's all getting watered. And then when it stops going, you know that you've got all the water through. But yeah, one of the biggest fights you're ever going to see is about the soil. Buy generic, you'll be absolutely fine. Yeah, so that's the badly explained way to keep one alive. Feed it, water it, don't let it die. Does anyone have questions? There's going to be loads after that shit show.